Hi, I'm Danielle Hoosevelt, registered dietitian and board certified health coach, and today we're going to talk about nutrition and diabetes. In today's video, we're going to cover several topics related to nutrition, including carbohydrates, proteins and fats, as well as how to balance meals and snacks to help get the best blood sugar response. Let's start with the types of nutrients and their effect on your blood sugar. We're going to talk about three main nutrient groups. You may have heard them referred to as macronutrients. We're going to talk about carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So the first thing to note about carbohydrates is that all carbohydrates affect your blood sugar. We often hear people with diabetes say, "Oh, I need to really cut out or control my sugar intake." And while that's true, it's important to remember that all carbohydrates affect your blood sugar. That includes sugar, starch, and fiber. Although it's important to note about fiber that it actually helps slow down digestion. But what about protein and fat? Well, protein's main function is to help us build muscle, and it's found in items like eggs, meat, beans, nuts. It does not affect our blood sugar, but like fiber, can help slow down the digestion of a meal. And finally, fat. Fat's main function in the body is to serve as an energy source and to store energy for our body to use later on. And while fat also does not affect blood sugar, it can help slow digestion down as well. So now that we know the three main nutrient types, let's take a closer look at carbohydrates, since those are going to affect your blood sugar the most. We talked about there being three types of carbohydrates: starch, sugar, and fiber. We can actually categorize them into two groups: simple and complex. Our simple carbohydrates are going to be broken down by the body quicker. We're going to see a faster increase in blood sugar and a quicker response from insulin. And these tend to be more of our simple sugars, like juice and soda, baked goods like cookies, muffins, and cakes, white bread and crackers, and things, of course, like honey and sugar. We also have complex carbohydrates. These types of carbohydrates do also affect blood sugar, but often affect it more slowly. So the body reacts with a slower, more plateaued increase in blood sugar and insulin. And our complex carbohydrates tend to have more of the starch and fiber components of carbohydrate. And they include things like whole grains, fruits and vegetables, beans, nuts, and other legumes. So this might be leaving you wondering, well, which types of carbohydrates should I be eating? Think about consuming more complex carbohydrates that are high in fiber and low in sugar. These can include whole grains like whole grain pasta, brown rice, whole grain bread, whole grain tortillas, quinoa, oats, farro, buckwheat. Can also include fruits, things like apples, berries, citrus like oranges, which contain fiber. And while, yes, there is naturally occurring sugar, fructose, in fruit, there's also a lot of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Also consider vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, dark leafy greens, tomatoes, okra, mushrooms, and starchy vegetables like sweet potato, potatoes with the skin included, butternut squash can also be included in your carbohydrates for the day. And then finally, beans and lentils and legumes contain carbohydrate and also fiber. So think about complex carbohydrates, high in fiber and low in sugar, as the carbohydrates you should consume most often. For some people with diabetes, it might be important for you to count your carbohydrates. This is particularly important for people with diabetes who are on insulin, who may need to adjust an insulin dose based on the amount of carbohydrate you're eating. The important number here is 15. So one carbohydrate serving equals 15 grams of carbohydrate. And we've got listed some examples of what that means. So one slice of bread or a third cup of pasta, rice, or quinoa cooked is 15 grams of carbohydrate or one carbohydrate serving. Also a half cup of canned fruit, a half cup of beans, one small piece of fruit is 15 grams of carbohydrate or one carbohydrate serving. A tablespoon of jelly or honey, a half cup of cooked cereal, a half cup of soda or juice, 3/4 cup of dry cereal is 15 grams of carbohydrate or one carbohydrate serving. And as a guideline, meals should contain around 2 to 4 carbohydrate servings or 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate, whereas snacks should contain 1 to 3 carb servings or 15 to 45 grams of carbohydrate. Now, depending on your height, your weight, your nutritional needs, this may need to be adjusted, and this is where your healthcare provider or your registered dietitian can help you figure out the right amount of carbohydrate for you. Another handy tool for learning about how much carbohydrate you're consuming or how much carbohydrate is a product is in the food label. So let's take a look at the food label and some important pieces that we want to take note of. There are 2 food labels on this slide, and the reason we have 2 is right now the label is in the process of changing to make it clearer and to give you even more useful information. So one of the first things that you want to look at in a label is the serving size. So right up here, serving size. This is really important because you want to know how much of a product you're getting for your calories or your fat, or in this case, your carbohydrate. So definitely pay attention to the serving size. You may also want to pay attention to something like the calories, fat content, but for the purposes of this video, let's actually just hone in on the carbohydrates. So remember when I said that all carbohydrates affect our blood sugar. We want to make sure that we're looking at the total carbohydrate, not just the sugars. So we look at this total carbohydrate. So we can see that this product has about 37 grams of carbohydrate, which, if we remember, 15 grams equals 1 carb serving. This product would be 2 servings and a little bit over that. Okay. The next thing that we want to look at is, well, how much fiber does it give us? Because we know fiber is an important part of complex carbohydrates. It can help slow down digestion. So we want to take a look at how much fiber is here. And we can see that this has 4 grams. A good rule of thumb, 5 grams or more is considered high fiber. Okay. So we want to take a look at the fiber. Finally, let's take a look at sugars. So now with the new label, not only can we see the total sugar, but we can also see how much added sugar is in a product. And there are some naturally occurring sugars like lactose and fructose, but we really want to look at the amount of added sugar that is in a product. And the American Heart Association recommends limiting added sugar to 36 grams for men and 24 grams for women. So it's important for us to take a look at that added sugar. Okay, and we can find that in the label right here. Here's our added sugar, and we can see that this has about 10 grams of added sugar. So now that we've learned a little bit about carbohydrates, let's think and talk a little bit about protein and fat. So what are some good choices for protein and fat when we're making up meals and snacks? The best choices are our lean proteins and our healthy fats. So what does that mean? Well, lean proteins include less Fat, so poultry, like chicken and turkey, and poultry without the skin helps reduce that fat content even further. Fish, lean cuts of red meat, so like a pork tenderloin, for instance, is an example of a lean cut of meat, of red meat, and we want red meat no more than 1 to 2 times per week. Also, you can include low-fat dairy like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, low-fat milk into lean protein sources. We can also consider some of our meat alternatives like tempeh or tofu. Beans and lentils also contain lean protein. And I know you're thinking, wait a minute, didn't you just say beans and lentils were included in the carbohydrates? Yes, that's true. So beans and lentils have starch, have fiber, and they have protein. They're also very rich in vitamins and minerals. So beans and lentils are a great addition to any meal. And finally, in our lean proteins, we can include eggs here. So let's talk about our healthy fats. Healthy fats generally are plant-based. They're liquid at room temperature. And so here we have some examples like avocado, olive oil, or other vegetable-based oils. And each vegetable-based oil has its own set of good properties. So getting a mix of oils like olive oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil, getting a mix can help make sure that you're getting enough of all of the different types of healthy plant-based fats. In our healthy fat category, we also can include nuts and seeds or nut butters like peanut butter or almond butter. And finally, we can include things like omega-3 fatty acids, like are found in fatty fish. Again, I know you're probably wondering, wait a minute, isn't fish a protein? Indeed it is. But it's also a really good source of omega-3 healthy plant fats because the fish eat algae, a plant, which is high in omega-3s, and they store it in their fat. And then when we consume fish, we get the benefit of those healthy plant fats. So again, when we're thinking about proteins and fats, we want to think about lean protein and healthy plant-based fats. Because I know we've talked about nutrients, but we don't eat nutrients, we eat food. So when you're thinking about, okay, so how do I balance this? Think about the diabetes plate. So making half of your plate non-starchy vegetables, which as we learned earlier in the video, is a carbohydrate and a healthy carbohydrate. Filling up half of your plate with non-starchy vegetables like broccoli or greens or cauliflower or okra or eggplant, right? Fill half of that plate with non-starchy vegetables. Consider making a quarter of your plate additional complex carbohydrate foods. So again, this could be brown rice, it could be whole grain tortillas, it could be sweet potato, it could be fruit. And making a quarter of your plate protein-containing foods. So this could be animal-based for those that are omnivorous. So it could be fish or poultry or a lean red meat, or it also could be plant-based. So this is also where you could include beans or lentils or tofu. And then finally, when you're considering a beverage, do consider water. Most of the time, reducing consumption of sweetened beverages will greatly reduce the amount of added sugar you consume. If you think about the limits for added sugar, remember we talked about 36 grams for men and 24 grams for women. 12 ounces of soda can have upwards of 39 grams of added sugar, right? So think about limiting those sweetened beverages and consuming water with your meals. So a good guideline on mixed meals and snacks, and this falls right in line with the healthy plate. Think about your meals containing a lean protein, a healthy fat, and some carbohydrate. And remember, your carbohydrates include your non-starchy vegetables, your whole grains, your fruit, your starchy vegetables. Your proteins are going to contain things like your eggs or fish or chicken or beans or lentils. And then finally, healthy fats could be the fat found in a fatty fish, or it could be a healthy oil or avocado. Think though also about your snacks containing multiple nutrients, carbohydrate and a protein or a fat. An example of this might be carrots, which are going to give you your carbohydrate, and hummus, which will provide your protein and a little bit of fat. So really think about consuming mixed meals and snacks. So in summary, some good guidelines on nutrition for diabetes is to eat regularly and not skip meals. And again, don't feel like you have to cut out all carbohydrates. We want you to balance your meals with complex carbs, lean proteins, and healthy fat. Drink water most of the time. Reducing sweetened beverages can absolutely help you reduce the amount of added sugar in your diet. Measure and track your blood sugar to help you and your provider decide on the amount of carbohydrate that's right for you. So tracking your blood sugar and tracking your food can help you see patterns and can help your healthcare provider see patterns in how you're eating, what you're eating, and the effect that it has on your blood sugar. Thank you so much for listening. This was Nutrition and Diabetes.